This is an institutionalized system of domination that, as I laid out, perpetuates the climate crisis, but also, in fact, systems of domination probably caused the climate crisis. Right? If there weren't concentrated forms of state and corporate power that were able to summon forces of domination to achieve their extractive goals in the first place, things probably wouldn't have even been able to get as far as they have. Right? The climate crisis and militarism have the exact same structural underpinnings and the same roots. They are both part of the same loop, the same system. And both parts of the joint crisis cannot be ignored. And I love this one quote that I think ties it up so perfectly. This is a quote by Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz from An Indigenous Peoples' History of the US. She writes, quote, "People do not hand over their land, resources, children, and futures without a fight. And that fight is met with violence." This is what the system of domination does in order to keep the land, the resources, take people's children and futures. And this has been the story throughout history, right? This is kind of an intimidating looking timeline, but suffice to say, this is just a handful of examples throughout US history where domination has been used at the behest of corporate powers or state powers to gather more resources or to hold on to whatever they don't want to lose when people rise up, right? And this is not just a relic of the past, right? The domination crisis is playing out before our eyes today, including in the US. And I wanted to conclude with one perfect example that people are starting to talk about more in the climate movement, but I think we could all stand to see is really the best example that we have in a sad way of what's going on today. That's the Line 3 pipeline, right? I don't know if you all are familiar with what's going on, but this is the perfect example of what's going on, right? Take Enbridge Corporation, right? A huge Canadian company seeking to increase profits by constructing a new tar sands pipeline, destroying the ecosystem in the process, adding huge amounts of emissions. So people rise up, right? Those are the photos on the left. People rise up and protest saying, this is not acceptable. You can't destroy our land and our futures. And then what's the response, right? Enbridge, this corporation, backed by the US government to some degree, is able to pay local Minnesota police to harass and dominate Indigenous protesters from this Indigenous-led movement. Right? They barricade the camps illegally. They surveil and intimidate everyone who's there. They've shot protesters with rubber bullets. Right? They pepper spray them, arrest them over and over, and impose huge legal fees on them through the courts. And all the while, Enbridge works its PR muscles, right, to suppress what's going on. And the Biden administration looks the other way, right, wanting to keep its image as a climate president, right, in the mainstream or whatever rationale they